Okay, so for today's lesson, we're going to write the equations of a tangent and a cotangent from equation from a graph. So for this first example, we are going to use this graph and write the equation for tangent and then cotangent. The process for these are going to be really similar to how we did these for sine, cosine, secant, and cosecant. So what I do is just like I did before, I'm going to list out that A, B, C, and D. So I liked to, how I did there, highlight the X and Y axis just to help me see. Okay, so what I'm going to start by doing is I'm going to place the asymptotes in my graph. Okay, I know that the middle point is going to be in between these two asymptotes. So the asymptotes are 4 units apart. So I know that middle point, or my starting point for tan graphs, have to be in between those, like right in the middle. Our amplitude points, we talked about how from that middle point to the asymptote, they're halfway. So this distance right here is 2 units, so half of that is 1. So if I go halfway, those are my amplitude points, okay? So that's going to help me with, talked about those top and bottom dashed lines, and then we have our middle dashed line here. Tan graphs always start as a point. So just looking at this graph, you really have 3 different options. I'm just going to pick 0 to keep it easy. So that's my starting point there. This has a positive slope, and we know that tan graphs, the A value is going to match the slope. So since that's positive slope, A will be positive, and my A value is 2, because that's the amplitude right here. The middle dashed line is sitting at positive 1, so our vertical shift is at positive 1. Now the period of a tan and cotan graph, we can just look at the distance between the two asymptotes. So those are 4 tick marks away. Well, I know this tick mark is worth pi over 6, and that's the second tick mark, right? So I take half of that, it's pi over 3. So I have 4 pi over 3 is the period. Half of pi over 6 is pi over 12. I was like, that's not making sense. Okay, so this is pi over 12. I have 4 pi over 12, which simplifies to pi over 3. Now, the period for tan and cotan is equal to pi over b. So with the other sine, cosine, secant, and cosecant, we always set the period we found to be over 2 pi over b. Well, I set this over equal to pi over b. So, and I can easily see that b is equal to 3. So y equals 2 tan 3x plus 1. Okay, going on to cotan. Let's talk about, we did this with the other 4 graphs. What stays the same, what always changes, etc. So, let me just scroll down here. So, so what changes? We'll just list out A, B, C, and D. The sign always changes on A. The period never changes. So just like with the sine and cos graph and secant and cosecant, it never changes. So you only have to find that once. C always changes because tangent starts as a point and cotan starts as an asymptote. And then the vertical shift never changes. Okay, so scrolling back up here. We said that we know the sign of this is going to change, so that's going to become -2 because this, like the parent function for cotangent, is negative slope. The b never changes, so I know that is 3. The c is going to change, so that's what I actually need to find right here, and then the d never changes, so I know my d is 1. So this is not going to be too bad here. My starting point needs to be an asymptote, so I just have to pick an asymptote. I'm going to pick that starting point right there of pi over 6. And then we have y equals -2. I'll write it down here. Give more room. Y equals -2 cotan 3x minus pi over 6 plus 1. Okay, let's try one more. So looking at this graph, we are going to write this just for tangent. Okay, so I'm going to add my asymptotes in. So if I go into the middle, these are 4 units apart, I know my points have to be right here. Leave an asymptote right there. Okay, then from that point right there to the asymptote, if I go halfway between there, those are my amplitude points. So my top line falls right there, my bottom line falls right there, and my middle dash line falls right there. Filling in my axis. Okay, so tangent. Tangent has to start as a point. So I'm just going to pick the point closest to the y-axis, so I'll pick this point right here. The tick marks, this is the third tick mark, is -3 pi over 4. So if I take a third of that, I'm at -pi over 4. So my starting point is at -pi over 4. The amplitude is 2. And this is tangent, and since those have negative slope, A will be negative. The vertical shift, my middle dash line, is sitting at 0. The period of the graph is asymptote to asymptote, and so these are 1, 2, 3, 4 units apart, and we said every tick mark was worth pi over 4, so the period is pi. I set that equal to pi over b. Well, that's just an understood 1, so b equals to 1. Okay, so y equals -2 tan x plus pi over 4, and we don't have a vertical shift. So there's one possible equation. Okay, that's it for today.